Before any factory, before any clock, humans lived in small nomadic groups. They followed animals and seasons, sleeping wherever night found them. There was no boss, there was no clock-in time. There was only the sun rising and setting, and the group deciding, day by day, what to do with the hours they had. In 1966, anthropologist Richard Lee spent months documenting the daily life of the Sand people in the Kalahari Desert and discovered something no one expected. Those people, with no agriculture, no technology, no food surplus, worked an average of just 15 hours a week to feed and sustain themselves. Decades later, anthropologist James Sussman spent more than 20 years revisiting those same communities and confirmed the same pattern in dozens of other hunter-gatherer groups around the world. 15 hours of work, against the 47 hours the average worker today dedicates to their job alone, not counting the commute, the screens, the household chores that never end. But here's what's fascinating. Those people didn't call that time work. They didn't even have a word for it. There were just things that needed to be done, and an enormous amount of time left over for everything else. Resting in the shade, a few meters from the fire, telling stories late into the night, caring for any child in the group, not just their own. None of it was called leisure. It was simply how life was, before someone decided to divide it into billable hours. There was something else going on. Something science would take decades to confirm, but long before any lab, the records were already there, waiting to be read. And that's exactly what historians found. For a long time, historians ignored this pattern. They read accounts from European explorers describing lazy peoples, people who spent whole afternoons sitting, talking, sleeping in the sun, and concluded those societies were backward, incapable of progress. Historians had ignored this for decades because they couldn't imagine people living any differently than we live today. Anthropologist Marshall Solins spent more than 16 years of research, gathering records from explorers, missionaries, and scientists, documenting this exact pattern across more than 500 distinct sources, from Australia to the Arctic Circle, from the Kalahari to the Amazon. 19th century travel diaries repeatedly described entire groups spending half the day lying in the shade, a few meters from the fire, with no guilt, no rush, no one demanding productivity. Decades later, science confirmed what those diaries had described by accident. Chronobiology studies, led by researchers like Jerome Siegel at the University of California in 2015, monitored groups still living without electricity, the Hadza in Tanzania and the San in Namibia, and measured, with sensors on the body, how long these people actually slept and rested each day. The result was measurable. No clocks, no screens, no alarms. These groups' bodies naturally alternated between activity and deep rest, following the light of the sun, with no one needing to tell them when to stop. No one told them to do this. Their bodies simply did it, as if some ancient program had been waiting inside them. And that same program is still inside your body, right now, waiting for a world that no longer exists. A heart that still expects 15 hours of effort and the rest of the day free. A stomach that still expects real hunger, not boredom disguised as hunger. Eyes that still wait for sunlight to know when to stop. None of this disappeared. It just went quiet, waiting. And maybe that's why so many people feel exhausted for no apparent reason. Because the reason was never invisible. It was always written in the diaries no one wanted to read. And confirmed decades later by sensors no one expected to confirm something so simple. The truth had been waiting the whole time. The first change happened slowly. And for a practical reason, not a malicious one. In Lancashire, England, at the end of the 18th century, the first mill owners realized steam-powered machines were more profitable if they ran non-stop, and that for that to happen, people would need to work on the same schedule as the machines. Then came the factory bells, calling workers before dawn. Then came the time clocks, installed at the gates, logging every minute of lateness. In 1888, Willard Bundy patented the first time card clock in the United States, a small mechanism that, for the first time in history, turned a person's time into a number that could be charged, fined, and sold. The point of no return came with electricity. When artificial light let factories run through the night, the sun stopped being the boundary of the day, and the human body, for the first time in 300,000 years, had to learn to ignore its own light. Today, the average adult spends more than 7 hours a day in front of screens, most of it after the sun has already set. Artificial light competing every single night with a biological clock that never got the memo. And here's the part no one talks about. It wasn't work that changed. It was time. Someone decided that time could be divided, timed, and billed, and forgot to ask the body if it agreed. Factory after factory, city after city, the same model spread across the world, until even outside of work, people kept living by the clock. Meals by schedule, not by hunger. Sleep by alarm, not by sun. The clock won, and no one realized what had been lost until much later. What if the exhaustion you feel every Sunday night isn't a flaw in you? What if the difficulty of simply stopping, of doing nothing without feeling guilty, isn't your body failing? What if it's the exact opposite? Your body trying to remember what it was like to work 15 hours and simply be for the rest of the time, exactly as it was built to do for 300,000 years. You were born with the same body that slept in the Kalahari sun, that measured the day by light, not by the clock, that worked just enough and then truly stopped. Actually stopped. No phone, no guilt, no email waiting. That body is still here, inside you, but the world around it has changed so much, it no longer knows its own name. We traded 15 hours of work for 47. We traded whole afternoons in the shade for notifications at 11 at night. We traded the open question of what life would ask of us for a schedule that already knows the answer before we even ask. There's no button to undo this. There's no app that gives back what was lost. There's only this ancient body, waiting, inside a life that no longer speaks its language. We eliminated, and most of us will never truly know what's gone. The sun still rises and sets, just as it did 300,000 years ago. Only now, almost no one is watching.